Every church I went to was air conditioned. Every church I went to except this one. It's expensive, but you know, nothing says welcome in a hot day better than a cold breeze. Something else I did not expect in an old building. They had projection screens, and I can hear you shivering already. Oh, can't do that. And admittedly, it does look out of place in the architecture, but I tell you, my experience of it was not what I expected. You know what a projection screen does? It means you don't have to look it up in the book. You don't have to go leafing through a hymn book and finding the right number. You don't have to figure out what you're supposed to do. It's right there. And everybody else is looking at it too. And what's more, when you're all looking at it, like the Jumbotron over there at Whitecaps Park, we're all pointed in the same direction. The sense of it being about a community, not a group of individuals, was even enhanced by the projection screen. Now, again, I'm not telling you this is the right thing or the wrong thing for us, but the experience was not what I expected. And it had benefits that I did not anticipate. Yeah, there was a loss of decorative purity, but there was a gain in social amity. Which do we value? Which should we sacrifice? In 4 of the 6 churches I have visited, including the 2 I've just mentioned, I was outed as a fellow pastor. And I was reported to be present in the building by the preacher. Bill, how'd you feel a moment ago? Not so good, huh? Well, in addition to looking really white, I am the minister of Fountain Street Church, and people do recognize me, darn. And my fellow pastor said, we have a guest in our house tonight, Fred Wooden, who is the senior minister at Fountain Street Church. I got applause. In 2 or 3 churches, I was invited to sit up on the dais. Why is that? It has to do with the clothes, not the clothes themselves. In the African American community and other communities where dignity is not automatic, where every honor is chipped from hard rock, if you are a reverend, you're called a reverend. If you're a doctor, you're called a doctor. And I don't mean physician, I mean any kind of doctor. In the African American community, I'm the Reverend Dr. Frederick Wooden. So there. But I feel awkward about that. You know, I'm white, it feels pushy, it feels snotty. But in the African American community, it's an honor to be a reverend and a doctor. And if you decline that offer, if you say, oh, no, not me, you're declining a gift of honor. If you were to give someone a great compliment and then you were to brush it away, how would you feel? You would feel dissed. One of the things I learned from the African American community is that dignity is bestowed, never guaranteed, and when it's offered, you accept it, because to refuse it is to dishonor the one who offers it. How often do we inadvertently give away the gifts we're offered because we're uncomfortable receiving them as compliments? How often do we say, oh, please, no, I'm no one consequential, when in fact someone is saying, you are a person of consequence. I honor that. We like saying namaste in Hindu. Why don't we just say reverend or doctor or mister? Why do we always go to the first name? You know, I grew up in a world in which you didn't use a person's first name until you knew them for a little while. It was presumptuous to jump right to a first name. And I'm not saying we should be cold or aloof, but this is part of who we are. And in the African American community, I learned that that's appreciated, lifted up, honored, and accepting it is part of the honor that we return. At True Light Baptist, I met the interim minister there, who was a man who grew up in the church. In the African American tradition, there are many associate pastors, often lifted up from the membership themselves. They go off and call on shut-ins and attend people in hospitals. They go to jails, a ministry that does not figure into a majority of our lives. He was something else that I also learned. He was a disabled vet. He had served in Vietnam and walked on a prosthetic leg. And I realized at that moment I had no idea how many disabled vets I had in my church, much less how many were in leadership. How many people that we do not look at as leaders could be leaders, people who may be missing a leg or a limb, who are disabled in some way, and yet we do not see them as having leadership. I just opened my mind then to realize anyone can be placed in a position of trust and honor if they have integrity and a gift to offer. Whether it's pastor or teacher, we should look not for the qualifications a person brings, but for the gifts that are hidden sometimes behind the clothing that we see. My next visit was down to Marvin Sapp's church, the Lighthouse Center, which is in the former diocesan headquarters down off of Boston. No, Breton, whatever, one of those roads down there. Burton, it's one of those B streets. Burton, Boston, I don't know. Now, he's a famous gospel singer, but he did not sing, which was my loss. But boy, did everybody else sing. At that place and at Bethel Abundant Life Church over here, the service started and a spoken word was not heard for 30 minutes. That service is about the music from front to back. And then I noticed something. Here in our quasi-Protestant, formal, white American way, worship is words enhanced by music. In a Bethel or a Pentecostal environment, if you're in a Pentecostal church, it's exactly the reverse. Worship is music enhanced by words. It's a whole different experience, which is why in neither place did I get an order of service. You just jump in the river and you swim. You won't drown. It's pretty straightforward. You don't have to know what's coming. Why do we have to know what's coming? Why is that so important to us? Makes me wonder from time to time. I'm just asking. Or as we say in other communities, just saying. The music in those churches, as you might understand, would be different from ours. It was largely contemporary, mostly gospel flavored. It was always loud. They do not know an amplifier they do not use. And for people with antiquated ears, that is a challenge. Wally, I know we've had this conversation. I'm looking at Wally Palucki. He came in to listen to e-worship last year. Just too loud for him, and he backed up, and he kind of driven back by the wall of sound. That's okay. That's a challenge because we like worship to be quiet, to be contemplative, to leave room for our thoughts to find their peace. But in a Pentecostal environment, or even in any African-American environment, the challenge is not to find peace at heart, but to find strength of spirit. And that's an animating process, not a contemplating.